Mike Blackburn, welcome to the Marketing for Business podcast.
G'day Scott, how are you?
Mate, I'm awesome. I'm looking forward to our chat today. We've known each other for a while,
Yes.
and I want to talk about your business journey from going from uni to where you are now. One of the guys behind the building co-op. But I've noticed recently you're causing a real stir in the marketplace with your understanding of what's going on in the building industry, the building market, the multiple dwelling market, and you've actually just come from the council doing a
That's right.
2-hour presentation.
This morning, yes, that's right.
You're in hot demand.
I am flat out, mate.
Hey, so let's start. Where did you get started? In your business journey, but also doing what you're doing. Obviously, you went to university. What did you study?
Well, I did an MBA sort of in the very early 2000s, and it really is an interesting story from where you start to where you end up. And I say quite regularly, I know very little about the construction industry. Over the last 10 years, I've learnt an awful lot. But when I started, I've been getting the building consent data from local councils for quite some time, and that was purely just a management process to understand the data. Because one of the things that I did know about the construction industry is that, with all due respect to all my friends and colleagues who are builders out there, builders often don't pay much attention to what's going on in the marketplace, those things that influence the market. And so
you're looking at like the bigger picture. They're doing the whacking and cracking, but you're looking at the bigger picture.
That's absolutely right. And so what my MBA taught me was critical analysis, to look at the data, to read the market, and to understand what was going on. And just to sort of give you some context for those people who aren't from Christchurch, following the Christchurch earthquakes, we had a massive building boom here. And it was quite clear from the data that by 2014 we had replaced all the houses that had been knocked down, and in actual fact we had overbuilt. And so it was clear to me that the number of building consents that were being issued was going to come down, and that was going to have a major impact on the forward workflow of builders and tradies and painters and plumbers and everyone in the construction industry. And so that was where the idea of the co-op came from. Is that I got together with some colleagues, and we saw that small and medium-sized builders, they really struggle to compete with the larger group home builders with the ability to get discounts for building materials. And so the original idea was, we thought if we could get 30 builders together, all building 3 or 5 houses a year, that we'd be able to negotiate some really good deals. Well, 5 years later, we've now got more than 1,000 shareholders New Zealand wide, and we are one of the largest buyers of building materials in New Zealand. So that journey, which started from a really simple idea based on data, that the building industry was going to decline, and we've been able to turn that into a really, really massive business opportunity.
That's awesome. So we'll unpack that as we go, because I find that like sometimes when your data can be really boring, right? But if you understand the data, you can actually add a lot of value to people and a lot of value to businesses. And I think that's the thing I wanted to talk to you today about, and obviously then also look at this whole multi-dwelling scenario and the information that's out there at the moment. Because look, let's be honest, we're in a time right now where it's getting particularly very hard for the construction industry, developers, etc. And you don't have to, you see them every day in the newspaper going to the wall and stuff.
So it's tough.
I think if we share some information today that maybe can actually even help them further to that. So the co-op though, when you look at, say, a co-op, what essentially is a co-op?
It's the best way I describe it is we're a little bit like farmlands, but specifically for builders and tradies. So because we're a co-op, to become a member of the co-op, you become a shareholder. So that's the legal, technical side of things. But basically, it's a bunch of people in the same industry, and we're using their combined buying power to be able to negotiate better deals than they'd be able to negotiate on their own.
Well, there's power in numbers, right? Strength in numbers.
Look, absolutely. And the other thing, and this is sort of a little bit of side effect consequence is that, and certainly in this time when we are facing some challenges going forward during the supply chain crisis, a lot of our shareholders came to us for advice. What's actually going on in the market? Can you help us with things like dealing with councils and the time it's taking to get building consents processed, and so that's and certainly equally. Following the recent flooding in the North Island, we've been able to sort of pull a lot of resources in. We've got a lot of contacts, a lot of knowledge in the industry, which just we can sort of feed back to the broader market, just to help them. Because again, as you said before, a lot of these guys spend all their days on the tools, building houses and all that sort of stuff, and they don't have the time or the resources or the knowledge to be able to source that wider information, which is so critical to any industry.
Yeah. And I guess that's the knowledge source that you've got there. But 1,000 shareholders plus, but you started with 30. So what was the idea there? Because I know talking from you guys, you even had some companies say, hey, we'll come when you're bigger, and we'll be a supplier when you're bigger. So you started with 30. What was the concept behind? What was your
the underlying principle, and it's exactly the same today, was to be able to use the volume of all of our spend of all of our shareholders to get a better deal than they would be able to negotiate individually. Now, when we first started talking to suppliers, you're absolutely right. We had a lot of bugger off and come back and see us when you've got a room full of builders, but we genuinely believed in the principle, and so we just kept knocking on doors. And certainly during the very, very early days, some of our first suppliers that came on board, it was a real leap of faith. They said, look, I like the idea, and we'll take a punt on you. I
guess they had to be worried about who they were supplying already, right? So you kind of there's a little bit of the mafia, not mafia, but there is a little bit of, there's some big suppliers in New Zealand.
I know what you mean.
They'll protect their patch, right? So for them to come on and support you would have been a leap of faith.
That's right, and certainly in the early days when we really did only have the 30 that we launched with. These guys really gave us the benefit of the doubt. Look, we've had to do some really, really hard work, and the 5 years that we've spent to get to this point here has been a challenge at times. But constantly we've been having new shareholders come on board, and what I really, really love is the stories that these guys tell us about how much money they're saving, and the opportunity that gives them to be competitive in the marketplace.
Yeah, true. Yeah, because they're up against the big builders and stuff like that who can buy a lot, so you're giving the little guy essentially a chance to compete.
One of our marketing catchphrases is leveling the playing field.
Yeah, nice. so when you think, how much would you be saving someone? What's an average?
Look, that really is hard to say. Look, we did an analysis with Bunnings, and I'm probably going to get these numbers wrong, but it was just through Bunnings alone, we were saving our shareholders, I want to say $12 million over what they would have been paying. Look,
that's substantial, right?
Look, it's absolutely substantial, and so I can't give you the exact numbers because sometimes that's a little bit difficult to calculate. But we are. It'd be fair to say we're probably amongst the top 10 buyers of building materials across New Zealand at the moment. So that's from nothing to that in 5 years.
And that would have started to snowball, right? As people start to talk. Do you still hold events for your builders or your shareholders and stuff?
Look, absolutely. Sort of over the last wee while with sort of COVID restrictions and then supply chain and all those other sort of things, that's been a little bit different. I'm off to Auckland tomorrow actually to sort of spend the day up there meeting with a couple of our shareholders and a couple of our suppliers, because we're constantly looking for new suppliers. We sort of want to add to that pool of people that we've got access to, but equally just telling those good news stories from our shareholders, because often in the construction industry, certainly in that small to medium enterprise space, word of mouth from, and you would know this, but word of mouth is just as valuable as me being able to produce something that sort of says, oh, you'll save $1,000 from Bunnings, you know?
Well, I always say, you know, like in the perfect world, get known by the success of your clients. So the more you can do to show that success of your clients and your customers, the better, right? Because it's better for them to say it than for you to say it.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you'll have a. What are some of like? Do you like? Have you seen any like companies just really grow from being part of the co-op? Like, have you got any that come to mind?
Yeah, look, we've got a couple of guys that I sort of I've known even before they become shareholders in the co-op, and one of the stories that I tell regularly is we've got a guy who's he was a cabinet maker.
Yep.
And he already had a trade account with Noel Leemings. And so he phones me up and he goes, Mike, he goes, we're redoing one of the rental properties we own. And he said, I've already got a quote from Noel Leemings on my trade account. He says, I'll email it to you. And if you can get me a quote from Noel Leemings for the CBS price, he said, if you can save me $1,000, then I'll join the co-op. So I email this off to Noel Leemings, and I think the total price for all their appliances was $15,000. Well, we got a quote back from Noel Leemings, and I think it was $11,000.
Wow.
So a substantial saving. And he just goes, well, I don't need to know any more than that.
No.
So that's just one example of.
And I'll have a big screen TV as well.
Well, but there's another thing that we encourage our builders and our shareholders to do is talk to your clients, because again, often builders will put a PC sum in for say kitchen appliances, and that just might be a standard figure. But if they can send these guys in to any one of our suppliers, then what they can actually do is, for the amount they would spend, they can get a whole level up of different appliances, better appliances. So
then that's a real strength of being able to add value, right? Which is, you know, like another reason to be part of the group, because you're adding value.
That's right. Well, and again, and it's not up to us to say what our shareholders do with their savings. I know that some will look to pass those savings on to their customers, and that's a competitive advantage for them to win business. Others are looking to use it to increase their margin.
Nice, yeah. Where do you see it growing? Like, you got to 1,000 plus. Where do you see the potential is for? Okay,
so here you go. So there's 85,000 enterprises in the construction industry in New Zealand. Look, gosh, I'm not sure. I think it's 20% of GDP or something. I'm not exactly sure. So look, we genuinely believe that over the next 7 to 10 years that we can probably reach 8,000 shareholders. Nice. That's sort of close to 10% of the construction market.
It'll be one of those things that go exponentially too, I'd say.
It will,
especially when you look at the time right now, you know, high inflation, high interest rates, supply costs have gone up and stuff. So you probably are fielding more inquiries right now.
Well, look, and there's a really good point, because I know you want to sort of talk about what's going to happen in the economy and the building consent data. So look, we are unfortunately set to face a really, really tough time economically, New Zealand-wide, but particularly for the construction industry. You're absolutely right. Interest rates are going to go up. Inflation's going to remain high. It's going to be hard to get working capital. And so a lot of these small and medium-sized builders are going to be looking for every possible opportunity they can get to save a little bit of money, just to keep them on the playing field with everybody else. And this is where I think that the market that we've created is really, really important at this point in time.
And once again, I'd say, you know, I've learned from the earthquakes and that sort of stuff as well, was getting around good people that are going and helping you in the same direction is real key when times are tough. Don't be by yourself, you know. Get around good people, get around someone who actually has a vision and has pointing their boat one way, but you've got 1,000 of them pointing the boat that way. So, you know, it's probably the perfect time now. if you're having or you're looking at supply costs, hey, you should be talking to you guys. So that $1,000 that you pay,
Yes.
like is that forever?
Yes, so that's a one-off fee. So we're, I get this question all the time. So we're not a buying group or a buying club. When you to become a member of the co-op, you have to become a shareholder. So it's $1,000 for 1,000 shares, and that's like so they're not tradable shares. This is not something that you trade on the NZX, but they are an asset. So if at any point in time you were to retire or were look to exit the business, you can sell on those shares to another business. There are a couple of conditions. There's some fine print there, but
do you actually have to be a business?
No. Look, we've got a lot of sole traders. Yeah. Look, me as a DIYer, I couldn't join. You have to be in the business of construction. But look, we've got a guy in, I think it's Ashburton. He builds chicken coops. We've got guys that build fences.
Yeah.
We've got property investors. We just recently had a couple of architects that joined. So if your business, we've got a couple of engineering firms as well. So if you buy, as part of your business, and whether that's a sole trader or a limited liability company, if you buy building materials from any of the main merchants, then you can become a shareholder in the co-op.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. I might become a property developer.
Yeah. I can see you doing that, Scott. Yeah.
Hey, so obviously this is the time, to get in, but let's just unpack the whole. Look, are you an economist?
No. I just said I've got an MBA, but look, I tell because. And this is sort of the other leg to my personal business. So I've been collecting the building consent data from councils for the best part of the last 10 years, and I write a monthly report on construction activity, not just with respect to building consents, but also the broader market activity. And so I've got a very, very detailed, it's quite specific, but a very, very detailed knowledge of all of the influences on the construction industry, literally across New Zealand at the time. So
you're seeing a lot of that, you see a lot of that, because one more thing why I ask you're an economist, because you hear like economists, they send a group together and if someone sees something, they'll piggyback that, but no one really, and you kind of get the feeling that they don't really, they're kind of stabbing in the dark of what's really going on. 1 month or 1 week they say something, 1 week they say something else. What I've noticed from you is you're very consistent in the information that you're putting out, and it's well thought out. And I've said to a number of people, hey, you need to go buy his report, read his report. They're like, why? I said, because he's analysing the real data. Yeah.
Well, look, and without sounding too negative here, I've been saying for the last 12 months that I can see a decline coming forward in the construction industry, and that's not just based on building consent data. That's based on the challenges we've had with supply chain constraints, the high rate of inflation which is flowing through to the cost of building materials, and just the.
It's a perfect storm, right?
Oh, look! Unfortunately, it is. I'm going to say it's going to be ugly over the next 12 months, and that will mean that there will be some casualties along the way. And part of the reason why I've been banging the drum, whether it be about this multi-unit report or about the tightening of the economy, is because see, most of these guys are family businesses. They're builders who are great at building houses. It's tough enough to run a building business at any time, let alone trying to compete against group home builders for pricing and on a declining economy. And so part of my mission is to sort of share this information because most of it's out there. You've just got to find it and put it together. And you mentioned before about the reports. One of the comments that I get most frequently is about the readability of these things. I sort of try and take a very, very complicated spreadsheet or set of data analytics and turn it into something that's very, very simple. I use graphs and infographics to sort of to tell a story which makes it easy for people to understand.
Yeah, and that's what people need, right? They need someone to take that complex into the simple. So, question here: who's it going to get really ugly for them? Like, What sort of is it? Is it the consumer? Is it the who?
So there's it's a bit like an onion, for want of a terrible cliche. So at the moment, New Zealand-wide, sales for residential construction have been tough over the last 12 months. So that's over 2022, and that's you've got to dig a little bit, and you've got to talk to a lot of builders and developers to get that story, because that's not necessarily widely publicly known. But sales have been down, and so of course building consents are directly related to sales activity. And if there's been a decline in sales, then that will inevitably flow through to building consent activity. See, most of the residential construction that's being built at the moment was sold 12 months or 18 months ago.
I don't think people or really get the fully of that, because I was watching something in Australia a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how it fallen off a cliff, but he said the real cliff was 12 months ago.
Absolutely, yeah. But what's happened is that you're so busy trying to just complete the work that you've got in front of you that often by the time that you pick up that your sales are really down, it takes a long time to fix to correct that.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, so you focus on multi-unit developments. What's the reason for that?
Well, look, obviously I look at all aspects of the market, but one of the things that I've been seeing and talking about for at least the last 12 months or longer is that I believe, certainly here in Canterbury and possibly in Auckland as well, is that we've been overbuilding in that multi-unit market. And look, it's a very complicated story to tell. It took me 2 hours to explain it to the Christchurch City Council this morning. But when you see, here's the thing. So councils and governments don't build houses.
No.
Okay. So let's just leave aside affordable and social housing for the time being. But builders build houses based on what they think they can sell. Now, whether that be you looking to buy a house, that would be what we would call a design and build, so you go and see an architect, or whether it be spec housing, and spec is short for speculation. And so what happens during times of boom, and again I can draw parallels to the boom following the earthquakes here in Canterbury, is that builders race out and build all of these things, and many start with 50% sales or less. So you might be building a block of 6 units, and then you go, look, I've got 3 pre-sales, and the bank goes, okay, well look, I'm happy with that. I'm gonna give you some money, and then you're out there building these things, and in the meantime the market's fallen away, and you've got 6, 10, 20, 30 units that are unsold, and then you're struggling to make sales, and then all of a sudden you're in trouble.
It's interesting. We had in our agency, we had a client, well, not a client, but a prospective client come and see us yesterday, and we flatly turned them away because they are just too late. They've got property that they can't sell. And look, they, we've got a saying, never take business on unless the people want their problem to become your problem, but they're prepared to pay your problem price. But even then, I don't think the money, whatever money we take, I don't think we're going to get them the result, because they are too late.
Look, I want to make it clear, it's not like the arse is going to fall out of the market. It is going to slow significantly. I'm on public record saying that I think, certainly here in Canterbury, that the multi-unit market is going to come back by 30%. But even in that worst case scenario, that still means that we're likely to consent something like 2,000 new units. I did a graph, and it was basically a pie chart. And when you're looking to increase sales, there's only 2 ways you can do that: increase the size of the pie, or take a slice of pie off somebody else. Okay,
totally.
Simple as that. But when the market shrinks, then your slice of the pie gets smaller as a proportion, and what's happening is that everybody else who's playing in that sandpit, they're equally feeling the pressure, and they're looking for ways in which they can increase their slice of the pie, and the only way you can increase your slice of the pie is to take it off someone else. So where not only are we entering a decline in the market, but what then happens is that builders become very, very competitive.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
Yeah. Another reason to be part of what you guys are doing with the co-op, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is there, I guess it becomes even more, if you're a buyer, you have more opportunities to get deals, right? And if you haven't been out there, you didn't have that FOMO from the last 2 years and you've been waiting, this is a golden time.
Look, anyone who's been around for a while, certainly in the construction industry, look, it's an unfortunate cliche: boom, then bust, then boom, then bust. But anyone who's been in the construction industry for a while will have seen this, and they go, okay, it's a long game, okay, and so look. I won't say there's no need to panic, because we are about to enter some really, really tough economic conditions, which is going to make it very, very tough for a lot of businesses. And we've already seen New Zealand-wide a number of construction companies and tradies go into liquidation, and that will continue. We will see more of that. But the smart guys, the guys who are paying attention, who are listening to the market intel and aren't reacting to it just now, they'll be okay. Look, you're going to have to adjust your business size. Maybe you've taken on more staff, maybe you've taken on some new premises. You're going to have to right size your business, and that's going to cause some pain. But one of the things which I've noticed about this boom over the last wee while, as opposed to the earthquakes, is that there don't seem to be quite as many brand new Ford Rangers and jet skis around. So maybe after the last downturn, maybe a few builders have been paying a bit more attention.
I think there's still a few around though.
Yes, there are some pretty nice looking Raptors out there, but
I think as an interesting, I learned something from a really good investor probably about a month ago. He said, "Look, Scott, when sellers got to sell, the buyers have got to buy." He says that market there'll be a potential that market will still be there. So it's not all doom and gloom, but at the same time, if you don't do what you're saying,
no. But look, one of the things which I have noticed, and this isn't exclusive to the multi-unit market, back in the tail end of 2021, we saw the price of residential sections in Christchurch double. They went from essentially from $450 a square metre to $1,000 a square metre in the space of about 9 or 10 months. And there was two reasons for that. One, land scarcity, which led the drive to increase prices. But secondly, is it because we were in a bit of a building boom, builders went batshit crazy and bought up every piece of land they could buy, and it became a bidding war. And of course now what's happening is a lot of builders are sitting on too much land. And so some are going to be forced to sell, and they'll have to take a haircut on that. But equally a number who are in a relatively good position will sit the market out. No need to panic. It'll be tough. But they will survive, and they'll again right size their business, and they'll get through this.
That's exactly what's going to happen, right? And you have to be on the right side of this.
But equally, if you've got some cash, there are some really good bargains out there. So if you
totally. What do you think other people in other parts of the country can learn from what we've gone through with the earthquakes? Just seeing what's happened, and with the flooding, etc. What do you think people can learn from what we did, and what we did well, and maybe what we did not so well?
Well, look, really, really good question. So the very, very first thing that I would say, and I've done a couple of videos on this with Carl Taylor, and we were talking about the lessons learned from the Christchurch earthquakes. First thing, document everything. Keep all your receipts, take plenty of photographs, because obviously any remedial work that's done by any tradie, whether it be on behalf of an insurance company or anything, you want to be paid for that, right? And so many of the disputes that arose here in Canterbury were because of lack of documentation or not keeping the proper records. Look, I'm still seeing building consents come through here in Christchurch 11 years after the fact for rebuilds of houses.
Wow.
So this, and that's got to be heartbreaking. It's got to be really, really tough. And you'd think that we'd be over it by now, that it'll be done and dustable. Well, unfortunately, no, there are still some stragglers coming through. So my advice to anyone who has been affected, the most important thing is documentation. Keep part of your records. Emergency repairs will need to be undertaken, and a lot of builders and tradies will provide the gear and provide the labour up front on a promise that they're going to be paid. But in order to be paid, you've got to have all those things in place, back to the insurance companies, back to the homeowners.
Yeah. So
critically important.
Keeping a record of all that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so if you don't do that, right, you get into this whole situation where you're in.
You're arguing after the fact.
Yeah.
And it's tough enough. It's emotionally challenging, and equally remember is that there will be just as many builders and tradies whose houses have been damaged or trashed as a result of this, and they'll be wanting to get their houses fixed just as equally quick as the rest of the public.
I think that was one of the big things we found in Christchurch too. You had we had builders and all that come from all over the place, but we also had a group of people that were building here. So it was a time to be alive, as far as there was so many people here. It was I was saying before, it's kind of like the Wild West, but you had people here with their houses, broken, disrupted, and everything.
So there is a bit of a silver lining, because as the building consent numbers fall away, and so therefore work and new residential construction gets a little bit harder, there will be a lot of work in the North Island all over that does need to be done, and so that may mean that builders need to relocate. I was talking to a merchant the other day, and I was going, look, we've just got over the supply chain crisis and the jib shortage, and all of a sudden now we've got a couple of thousand houses in Auckland that need 50 sheets of jib board. Which is going to continue to put pressure on the rest of the country. But I suspect that one of the silver linings being as the market falls away in some parts of New Zealand, there will be work in others.
And we were having some painting done at our house the other day, and exactly the guy was from Blenheim. He came to Christchurch during the earthquakes and stayed, right? So he's relocated, and he's grown a business here. So,
fabulous. Christchurch, beautiful place to live and work.
Yeah, it is. It is a beautiful place to live and work. Easy access. Go surfing, skiing, you name it. So, how do you as a management consultant, how do you help your clients? Because you've got a couple of hats, right? You've obviously got the co-op hat, but then you've got your management consultant hat. How do you help your clients? What's the process that you take people through, and why do people come to you? Is it?
Look, it's. The market that I work in, and this is with my Canterbury construction hat on. It's a very, very small market, and how I started with this is literally one-on-one contact. I in my early years did a lot of networking events and all those sort of things, and that's just hard yakka. But once you get to start to know people in the industry, people start to comment on the reports that you write. I get asked on a regular basis to comment in the media and at various events and things like that. And so what happens is slowly that reputation builds. But what I'll do is that, and again, it's a little bit about telling a story. So no one, which is why I've created a business out of doing this. No one wants to sit down and read a bloody spreadsheet, and look at all this data from the council. But what they do want to know is they want to know what that means and the impact on their business. So and I do a lot of one-on-one consultations. I do a lot of workshops where these building companies will get me to come in and talk to their key staff about the market, and it'll be an interactive sort of backwards and forwards, and because I'm looking at where their business is at specifically, because whilst generically all these businesses are kind of in the same market, everyone's got a unique set of circumstances as to the type of what they're building, their financial exposure, and all those sort of things there. And so what I'm trying to do is provide resources and information that helps them to understand their place in the market.
Nice. Yeah, and so uniquely for each business that you deal with.
That's right. Yes.
That's very valuable, right?
Yeah. I mean, look. A lot of the stuff is the same. You know, I mean, we're all facing interest rate increases. It's harder for everyone to get access to money. But by looking at what you're building and how that relates to the current market. See, one of the things that I'm able to do is I'm able to sort of drill down really, really deep in this data. And this is what I've done with this multi-unit report. I've looked at the type and style of dwelling we're building. I'm looking at the average size. I'm looking at the cost of construction. And most of these guys are operating in a similar but slightly different space of the market. And so being able to sort of pull out the data that relates to that and looking at the broader data, I can say, well, look, you guys are here. This is what's happening to the market. Look, a really good example is we have, and I mentioned before about overbuilding. It's not just about overbuilding. It's also about building the wrong thing isn't the right word. What we've built is predominantly 1 and 2 bedroom units, and that's cool because that fulfills a certain segment of the market. But what we're seeing now is that market has become saturated, and there's been a real lack of 3 and 4 bedroom, even in this multi-unit space, or equally with car parks. There's been a lot of these units that have been built without car parks. And that's okay. There's a certain segment of the market that wants that, but I'm seeing that market is now saturated. And so a lot of the feedback I'm getting from architects and developers is that they're sending their projects back to be reworked. Because they're going, I can no longer sell these things, and I now need to be operating in a different segment of the market.
I'll bring a different product to the market.
Absolutely.
I was talking to a mate the other day who was looking at buying a product for his mum, and it was a 2 bedroom, but it had no garage. And he was like, well, if there's no internal garage, I'm not putting mum in it because I want her to be able to drive in, shut the garage door, be safe, you know, versus parking on the road. And you know, I was like, well, what, you know, you can build for one type of the person, but there are other people out there that want. So 3 and 4 bedrooms. So do you see like there's just an undersupply of that in Christchurch here? Is that what you're picking up?
Certainly at the moment, if you look at the size of dwellings being consented, the average size of all these multi-units that have been consented, certainly over the last 12 months, is about 86 square metres. Okay, wow. And the average. Sorry, I'm going to talk some numbers here. The average household occupancy in Christchurch is 2.65 persons per household. Okay. So you can't fit 2.65 people into an 86 square metre unit. I mean you can, but not as a housing stock across the whole of our housing population. So again, by sort of and as I said, there's a certain segment of the market who absolutely want to buy these things, whether they be first home buyers or investors for rental properties, and that's absolutely great. But you can't build all your stock of all of our new housing that size there, and understanding all those other things in the broader market is something that a lot of builders miss.
I think one thing I've just got from listening to you, you're very passionate about this, right? Which I love, right? So let's look at that, because if we talk about marketing for a bit and we talk about building a personal brand, you know, I can tell you've built that on a reputation of being passionate about an industry. And
I don't mind telling a few home truths every now and again as well. Which,
but I think, you know, growing a personal brand, what have you seen the keys to that? Like turning up every day? What's your...
Look, absolutely. And in times of adversity, you've just got to sort of put your head down and bloody hard work, I think, is the key thing. I mentioned before about personal relationships with your clients. I mean, I'm in a... What I do with my building consent data is completely different with the co-op. But with the co-op, we have a broad New Zealand-wide target market. And again, I said before, the size of that construction industry is absolutely massive. And so our marketing tactics, the way we communicate with that market is completely different to what I'm doing with my building consent data. Look, I would estimate that the potential size of the people who want to talk to me is maybe 300 or 400 deep. And so the way you go about approaching that particular market is completely different to the way we go about sort of marketing the co-op.
Marketing the co-op.
Yeah.
So building that personal brand has really helped you grow.
Absolutely, without question. And of course, one thing leads to the other.
Because you're seen as a thought leader, right?
Well, that's
then
right.
You can add value to the conversation over at the co-op as well. One thing I really want to talk to you about also was mindset, and I think you've got a really good take on your perspective of how you protect your mindset. How do you grow your mindset? It's around having a peer group. Let's talk a little bit about that. What do you do there?
Well, look, that was one of the reasons why I did an MBA in the first place. I had been in management for quite some time, and it's sort of, you hear this all the time, sort of reached that sort of natural ceiling where I really needed something else. And so the MBA gave me that broader perspective on the market. But so I've always been a learner, a reader, a study of what's going on. But and when I first started, look at networking events and all those things which are available to all of us, turning up and meeting people and talking to people. But one of the things I've developed now is that I've got a peer group of maybe 7 or 8 people that I've developed some really, really special relationships, and they're across a wide variety of industries, lawyers and accountants and other business people. And it's a bit of a mentoring session, backwards and forwards, and we meet infrequently, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes 2 or 3 of us will get together, and we talk about our businesses and the challenges. And look, one of the other challenges in the construction industry is that because it's predominantly blokes don't like to talk about their feelings, and one of the things, and this is as a management consultant, what I've found is that builders often won't reach out for help until they're already in the shit. And sometimes that's too late. I've had to deal with a number of clients who the only option is liquidation, and whereas 6 months, 12 months prior to that, and so I take those lessons on board, and I talk to my peer network about the things that are going on in my business, the influences that I'm seeing, and sometimes you'll get told a few things which you don't necessarily want to hear, but I think the ability to listen and take that advice from people who have an alternative perspective is really, really important.
It is really important because sometimes you only can see it your way, right?
Yeah.
I think having hard conversations is extremely important as well, and not being afraid to have those, if you are going through some tough times, let people know. And I think obviously, in the industry, the mental health side of things it's a real concern,
look, it really is. Look, shout out to mates in construction, and it's been and will continue to be a topic which is a challenge for people to sort of talk about. But the more we talk about that, I think it's really, really, because look again, for most of these guys, this isn't, I want to say this isn't a business, but it's it started out as being a job. It started out as being a passion. The number of guys that I know who are absolute craftsmen at their job, and it's very, very easy to start out in construction, man in a van with a dog, and away you go. I'm building chicken coops, I'm building fences or whatever. But to take that from being something you're really, really good at to being a sustainable, ongoing business is a real challenge. And when times are tough and when the economy's tough, some of these guys aren't even talking to their wives about some of
Yeah.
this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you might go down to the pub and it's all good and how's business going? And but when what they really want to say is, I'm really struggling, mate. And whether it be mentally or whether it be financially, the ability to talk it out is really important.
And generally, probably the two of them are matched together, you know, because look, I've been in business a while and had a few businesses. No one ever taught me the financial side of stuff, right? I had to learn that and understand how to control money. I was actually talking to someone before about that, and I think that's some of the things I guess the co-op can really help their shareholders with is how to actually manage their business and how to run a business, right?
Absolutely.
Because I know, you know, once those financial pressures come on, that's when everything else can start to spiral because they don't see a way out. Which is a scary place. So a peer group, that's a pretty cool way of getting around, and you get a different perspective from everyone else. Hey Mike, this has been a really good chat. It's gone super fast. Like we've done nearly 45 minutes already. I wanna wrap this with a question because I know there's some people out there that really, you know, when you look at your co-op, you know, what are 5 things that you've learned? Because it's been super successful. You go from a 0 shareholders to saying, hey, we're going to pitch to 30. I know from talking to you, you know, some of those big suppliers would have been a smack in the face saying, hey, we're not coming until you get this many. But then you break through and you get 1,000 shareholders, and I can definitely see you going through to 8,000. What are 5 things that you've learned that allowed you to grow that co-op?
Okay, so the first thing is have some really good business partners. Obviously, so yes, I'm one of the founders, and we've got there's 5 of us who started the co-op, and we all brought something different to the table. We all have completely different skill sets, and I genuinely don't think that if we hadn't had these 5 key people, that we would have made it a success. Because remember, it took 2 years from coming up with the idea before we had everything in place, and that was just so the right people, hard work. Okay, it was bloody hard work for those first. Well, it's still hard work. Persistence, okay, because you will get told no time and time again, and sometimes you've just got to be stubborn. You've got to be realistic, but you know the ability to not accept no is a really important thing. Understand your market, and we've talked about this on a half a dozen occasions in this particular video. Is know your market. Know who you want to talk to, know what you want to say, and just keep developing that business. What we started with is still our core. Is cheaper building materials based on volume spend of all of our shareholders. But we have seen. Look, we've. I haven't given a plug to the Cash App. We've now got a Cash App where if you haven't got a trade account, and that's a whole nother revenue stream. More suppliers, business. Talking to our shareholders about business activity, and certainly in the case of the flooding, the resources that are available. So it's continuing to grow and develop that business.
Continuing evolving.
Is that enough?
Yeah, that is real good. I want to talk to the hard work part for a second because I think that's. You know, I'm seeing from a business perspective, and I'm not sure, you know, some people, I'm not sure how committed they are to working hard anymore. You know, it's become, whether it's become, you know, like you see this afterpay generation, you know, and it might upset a few people here, but it's real easy to have stuff that you want versus saving, working, saving. You know, what do you think about hard work? Have we lost it here, or is it coming back?
Most of the guys that I know in the construction industry work incredibly hard. I would temper that with what I said about working a little bit smarter as well, and that's where I come back to the knowledge and the information. You've got to pay attention to what's going on, but look again, and I don't want to be unkind on people who are younger than me, but you know, I think that was something that we sort of grew up with was the understanding of hard work and the value of sort of that there, and I think that it's important to keep telling that story.
Yeah.
Is that persistence? And look, there are times when you just okay, I've got to change tack, I've got to do something else, because the reality bites that you've reached a dead end and you've got to look for something else. Hopefully you'll see that before you get to that point. But I think the ability to just keep talking about hard work, because how many times have you heard this phrase? Is that the harder I work, the luckier I seem to get. You know what I'm talking about?
It's so true, right? Like, it's so true.
True.
So true. And persistence is the key to that, right?
Yes.
Because you just have to be prepared to know where you're going, be focused on that. Hey, we're going to get to 8,000 shareholders. We've proven already. We've got from 0 to 1,000.
Yep.
We know this model works, so we're just going to be persistent now. We understand our market. We understand the problems they have at the change of the market too, right? I think that's a skill as well that you guys have done quite well. You've entered the conversation that's going on in the market and the media quite well. And the more you develop that, the more exponential that you will grow, and then continuously offering value.
Yes, value. Look, that's the big thing, because at the end of the day is the only way the co-op succeeds is if our shareholders choose to spend their money with our suppliers, and because it's a three-pronged partnership, because we've got the shareholders, so the builders in the market, we've got our suppliers, and then we've got the cooperative, which enables those things to happen.
Mike, this has been an awesome chat. I really appreciate your time. If someone wants to get hold of you, where's the best place to get hold of you?
So look, the easiest thing is to go to our website, which is cbscoop.co.nz. All of our sort of contact details are on there. The other place you can find me is LinkedIn. So just look for Mike Blackburn on LinkedIn, and you'll find me there. And all my contact details, my email address and my phone number are on there. And happy to chat.
That's awesome. I appreciate your time. We'll actually have Mike's details on below, show notes here as well, so you'll be able to find him on LinkedIn. He shares some really, really good information. So I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for listening. Please share the podcast, and we really, really appreciate you being here today. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you.